Before we get started, you know DomainTools.com, right? I can type whois.sc/domain name really fast, and I do it daily, but until recently, I didn't know how powerful their other tools were. If I want a domain name, I can set a free alert to notify me when it changes status. If it goes to auction, I can use their sales history tool to find comps and determine my maximum bid price. If I buy it and develop the domain name into a business, I can set up alerts for any domains registered that contain my trademark, and I can set up registrant alerts of all my competitors so I can keep an eye on what domains they're buying and know what they're up to before they make any announcements. DomainTools.com needs to be in your toolbox like it's in mine. Go sign up for an account on DomainTools.com today. My second sponsor is David E. Westlow at Wiley Rhine. Imagine having a legal issue like a UDRP or a cease and desist. Imagine having to get an agreement put together quickly for buying or selling a domain name. And imagine going to your family lawyer who just doesn't get it, or one of the expensive law firms in your city who are going to invoice you for thousands upon thousands of dollars. Then imagine going to David E. Westlow, who will understand your domain name portfolio and your intellectual property assets, understand the domain name environment, and be able to help you out quickly. David E. Westlow. I recommend him. I trust him. I suggest you give him a call. Your initial consultation is free. David E. Westlow at Wiley Rhine. Finally, our newest sponsor is Protrata, the domain exchange. Protrata is an amazing new platform for professional domainers and newcomers alike. Protrata makes trading domain names easy. With just a few clicks, you can analyze, bid, buy, and sell domains across all of the major marketplaces, including Namejet, GoDaddy, SnapNames, and Craigslist. You can also develop stagnating domains you own into great-looking, content-rich, socially active websites that will rank at Google and Bing. This tool is more comprehensive than any other I've seen. If you only use it for its 21 powerful buying filters, you'll get your money's worth. Get your free 14-day trial now at protrata.com. Protrada.com. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the domain name authority and the place where you can learn how to become a successful domain name entrepreneur directly from the experts themselves. I'm about to interview a domainer I just met in person and had a great time with. I've done interviews with mega domainers like Frank Schilling and Rick Schwartz in the past, but they had the vision and got started in the mid-1990s by buying domain names early or hand registering some fantastic single-word generic domain names that they've leveraged into a very valuable portfolio. Besides being entertaining, most domain investors starting out today have no chance of replicating their success. The big question for this interview is, can a domain investor start out today and earn hundreds of thousands of dollars per year? Joining me to answer this question is Paige Howe. He is the president of Joe Domains, where he buys and sells domain names on a daily basis. A lot of domainers have been following Paige since he bought and sold seniors.com and guy.com, both for 7 figures and both sold in 2007. And all of us are particularly interested because Paige didn't start acquiring domain names in the mid-1990s. So today we're going to find out how he does it. Paige, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Hello, Michael.
So you've had some grand slam sales, Paige. Seniors.com, 1.8 million in 2007. Guy.com, 1 million in 2007. Stephen Covey says we should start with the end in mind. So I'm going to start today's show with the day that you sold Seniors.com. Do you remember the moniker auction that took place where Seniors.com sold for 1.8 million?
Absolutely.
What did it feel like to have a domain name sell for that much in a public auction?
Well, there was 2 things happening simultaneously. One, I think conceptually, we all thought that's where it should sell. And that traffic auction specifically was in New York City with Rick and Howard saying, bring your best one-word .coms, the best names in the world to one place, the biggest city in the world, to really sell them, to sell the best that we had. And so on one hand, you're like, well, gee, seniors, that's a huge demographic with much of applications. Let's put it up there. Let's put it out there. But then when it did sell, and those that were there with me, I appreciate it because they shared the moment with me. It was a return on a lot of time. 5 to 6 years of holding the name, at different times having different expectations met or dashed, different questions you ask yourself: Is it really going to happen? Could it be this? And on one hand, you're like, it could be 10 times that. It could be 20 million or 50 million. And so it was an interesting day. What's funny is I also sold 2 other names that day for actually on a percentage basis more than Seniors.com, but Seniors was the sale day.
It was. And so the auction took place. They slammed the gavel, 1.8 million. And did you feel vindicated after holding a domain name for 6 years?
I would love to say that I did, but any true domainer listening to this article, and I know your industry has a lot of new people, your first thought is, man, the buyer got a great deal. I probably sold for less than I should have. But anyway, I think it was a good sale. It was right. It was proper. Monty Khan did a terrific job bringing a good group of buyers into the room. It's what should have happened for our industry, and I think could still happen today or even next week as you go down to Florida for the big auction they're having there.
And so you held that domain name for 5 to 6 years that you said. You sold it for 1.8 million. How much did you buy that domain?
1.5 million. 1.5 million after commission. So it didn't all come our way. But
all right, that's a good point to bring up. That a lot of people, they get the dollar signs in their eyes and they see a number and actually after commissions and of course you'd have to pay taxes on that and things like that. But and what did you actually pay for the domain name back in 2001?
It was a combination of things. It was a company that had raised venture capital for it to be Seniors.com. They had bought the name from the original registrant, and they had, like many companies in the first bubble, ramped up, hired a lot of people. They were left really with the domain name, which is the one true asset a lot of internet companies had left, and an office lease. And we were able to buy it for around $100,000, which was a combination of money to pay off the old company, some consulting and some other things to take, and that was what that company had left was their name. And that's one of the great things about a domain name. It becomes what you have left sometimes to sell, even if your strategy doesn't work. Exactly.
That's a great point. Technology becomes outdated and people don't want to have to take a technology that might have been developed for Seniors.com and try and work with somebody else's code base. And so that's a great point that the one true asset left over could be the domain name. So you bought it for $100,000. Sorry, go ahead, Paige.
But also it becomes something you can attach everything to. If anyone's ever sold a business, sometimes it's really hard to define what the business is that you're selling. Is it going to come with covenants not to compete, certain technology? How do we really know we're getting everything? And sometimes when someone buys a name and builds stuff on top of it, the name can be that magnet that everything's attached to, that really when they transfer possession of that name to the new buyer, they're getting everything that name's ever been and will be, as opposed to having to define all that legally. So it's both, whether by itself or with everything, it becomes a sellable asset.
Definitely. So let's talk numbers, Paige. How many domain names do you own today?
So our company and our different stores, we're at about 25,000 names.
Wow. And how does that portfolio of 25,000 names break out by TLD or niche or area or however you organize your domain names?
Hold on a second. I'm still getting comfortable with the fact that I just said I own 25,000 names. I guess it's not a problem until you admit it's a problem. But we buy what we call purpose names. So we buy names that say what they do and do what they say. We're probably 80% .com. And the only reason we're maybe 80% .com is that we really like .tv, so we're probably overweight there, and we're actually overweight in .la, if you can believe it, which is a country code, but it's also used for the city of LA. So we're big believers in com. We think if you're convincing someone to buy the best word, you might as well convince them to buy the best TLD. So we're almost all com, except for maybe some cities where the com is taken by a non-related user will own the nets, and so mostly com.
Okay. And how much revenue did your company bring in over the past year, roughly?
Revenue. So we probably sell between about 25 and 50,000 a month in domains in our portfolio division. We have some big names that we have that we may sell in relation to their cost that would skew those numbers. But in terms of the everyday, the portfolio that we manage, we do about 25 to 50,000 a month.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, you've got a portfolio division of premium domain names. They sell for more than the $8 registration, but they're domains that sell pretty quickly on a regular basis. And then you have a separate division, which is ultra premium, which are really expensive domain names. Is that how you break it out?
Yeah. So, I mean, we reinvested the money that we did with seniors.com. And so we may own some cities. We may own some big one words. We own things like exquisite.com or sushirestaurants.com. So we're treating that as its own asset. You know, we're probably depreciating it. We're accounting for it differently. We're treating that as a company maker. We're more likely to do joint ventures. We're more likely to handle inquiries over the phone as opposed to maybe just an email. And then in the portfolio division, we break it up into different stores that we market through, and then we put the names for sale at the different aftermarkets that are out there. And we do what's called multi-channel management, meaning it's our job to have the names for sale everywhere that names can be for sale. And then we've got to obviously make sure we have an accurate inventory, that when we sell a name in one place, we take it down everywhere else. And that really keeps us in touch with the day-to-day changes and what's going on with selling domain names and those things.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about your multi-channel management process because I think it's really important for domainers to understand that. I think the numbers that you just gave gives the audience a great sense of where you are today. And I personally find it sort of sets the stage and allows me to now process the advice that the audience is going to get from you. But let me ask you this, Paige, before we get started. Why are you willing to share so much information about where your business is now? Why are you telling us how much revenue you have? Why are you being so open?
Well, for one, you ask. I got to know you this weekend, and the first time you called just to share with your audience, I probably wasn't as open. I think we have a responsibility to educate people as to what domain names are. 3 years ago, I actually wrote a book, so I'll show you the book that I wrote. We wrote this book, Domain Name Investing, How to Make Money in Internet Real Estate. And at that time, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could tell everybody what I know, But at the same point, everyone armed with that information should come in and just like maybe online poker or some of the other phobias, they can just buy everything. And we haven't always treated the new money in our business well. It comes in, we might want to sell it, everything that we want to sell it, and then you have people that didn't really buy the best assets and they're stuck and we're not growing it. So I do believe that the value of each node in a network goes up the more participants you have in a network. So you'll probably see some more stuff from us in the next 4 to 6 months involved with education, trying to give people a sense of what it is they're buying. I mean, just to cut to the nudge, we think you make domains on time. You've got to hold them. You've got to wait for something to happen. The idea that you're just going to buy it here and sell it here and buy it here and sell it here, I think some people do that really well. But there's got to be a reason a domain changes over time. And then secondly, it's better to, frankly, from someone who's full-time domaining, it's better to still have another job. It's better to have a job in a legacy business where you're getting paid for doing something that's valuable that someone compensates you for. And then you don't have to tax your domain portfolio with having to pay for your lifestyle. At the same time, you're trying to hold on to these assets for a time when their value will really be appreciated. So I think those are some of the things that we like to tell people is even though you might hear a story here or a story there. And then lastly, I guess, if I could advise new people coming in the business is, if you want to invest in the stock market, you just wouldn't look at the ticker and pick a stock and say, I'll buy it. You'd put some time and effort into it. So if we can give people an idea of what that is, you'll probably hear more from us. So that's the answer.
Great advice. And when that book comes out, I want a Paige Howe autographed version of it.
Well, I'll probably charge a little extra, but it's interesting because I had to ask myself, if I